Right, everybody, happy hands. Okay, here we are in Wednesday, 25 March 2020. I have Brian Flaherty on with Matthew Whitaker. Matt keeps begging me to come on every day, so I keep letting him. I've already had requests for him to be removed, but since it was his idea, I told people I can't remove him. He's going to be the co-host for the duration.
We have a deal and I have pictures.
Yeah, that's the problem. He has pictures. So I have to give him his just due. But I'm very excited today to have Brian on because he's going to give us a deep dive in some of the financial perspectives that he can bring from Global Strategic. So Brian, give us a minute and introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Appreciate the opportunity to be on here with you guys. I am Brian Flaherty. I'm the COO of Global Strategic Business Process Solutions, Inc. and Amerisource, Inc. Basically, Amerisource is our domestic version of our offshore version, which is global, and we're a custom business process solutions provider. What that means for your listeners is we work for a lot of property management groups, a lot of real estate, a lot of REO, handling the back office, work orders, calls, lease application renewals, you name it. We're doing it if it can be done, or accounting and bookkeeping, keyed to a computer or on the phone. We're handling it for 70, I think, at this point, property management groups around the U.S. So obviously, greatly impacted with or feeling the pain that you guys are all feeling here in the U.S. Because we're managing the continuity piece on the back end for you guys. So we're right there in the struggle with everybody who's listening to this podcast.
Good stuff. So let's kick it off. What do we want to talk about with the headlines today? So the stimulus package of, what was it, like $400 trillion or something, is on the verge of being passed. I mean, it's just a ridiculous number. Matthew, can you give us some headlines there, please?
Yeah, it's $2 trillion, and I think it has not passed. So, I mean, there's all sorts of red tape that they're running through, including Bernie Sanders is acting like he may not let it pass. But one of the things I think is important is, and I've pulled this straight from the Wall Street Journal, they're approving $350 billion in loans to small businesses just like us in an effort to keep Americans on the payroll. So there's a focus on us keeping people employed across the country. Under the new program, loan money that small businesses use to cover payroll expenses, rent, interest on mortgage obligations, and utilities will be forgiven. So think about that. It is not just a loan. They're giving away free money as long as you use it on those, again, payroll, rent, interest on your mortgage obligations, and utilities. So I think that's a pretty big deal. What do you think, Brian?
So before I answer, let me give you an update, and Brian, I'll let you have it. So on the SBA thing, we've been working on this all day to finish our application. Amy in my office, who's my accounting coordinator, has been looking at the website all day trying to get through, still has not gotten through. So we created sort of a workaround. We ended up downloading the packet and emailing it into the SBA. You're going to have to call and get some sort of email from them, but this might be the workaround if you get super frustrated on the site keeps crashing. So what are you supposed to do if the site keeps crashing? So this might be a workaround that actually get the application in front of them as we email it in. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I have a unique perspective on the SBA loans. There's a lot of misinformation about them, and I've been researching them. If the very first criteria that you're going to see when you're applying for the SBA loan, and if you own your own business, it's not a big deal, but well, maybe it is that any owner of your company that has 20% more stake in your company has to fill out a personal financial statement. Now they're calling them unsecured, and they really are all but saying you are not going to have to pay them back if you utilize them for to fund the items that Matthew highlighted there. So if you are forgiven that debt and they come after you for it down the line, you did provide a personal financial statement. So I don't know how concerning that is. And I tried calling in to ask about that question. And there is no way to get anybody on the phone to actually talk to them at the Small Business Association, at the Fed there to talk about these loans and maybe some of the concerns that you might have with them. So there's a lot of misinformation. There are groups out there that you can go to get advice, but they charge you for it. So they'll help you with your small business application, but then they take a piece of it. So I don't know that that's the best course of action either. It is crazy times for trying to get the money, and it's not like it's just falling out of the sky. So I would tread lightly with some of these loans that they're offering.
Yeah, Brian. So what Brian's talking about is there are loan packagers that the SBA has kind of deemed, and they've gone through the process. I mean, part of the problem with the SBA is it's always been very paper. You know, you've got a lot of stuff, a lot of boxes you have to check, and so these packagers know what boxes need to be checked and can kind of help you wade through the process. But like Brian said, there may be a lot of people pretending to be this right now. So go with somebody that's been doing it for a number of years. It may be worth the money. Sometimes these people cost $3,000 to $5,000, but if it saves you all sorts of time, it may be worth using a packager.
Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. I kind of heard about those, but I didn't know if that would be an effective deal. So the limits on that, you know, we're throwing around this $50,000 of actual money that could be forgiven, air quote. And again, you know, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. But there's also, what's the limit on that? They're going up to like 500K?
2 million.
The last I saw was it $1 million?
I think it's 2 million. They're up to $2 million was the number I saw.
Wow, that number just keeps moving. So I had not seen that one.
Amazing stuff on that one. That could be good news for companies that are kind of squandering. You know, I just having a conversation with Harry Heiss, the attorney from Florida, and he, you know, the sky is falling in his mind. And I love Harry, and I'm a little nervous. He makes me nervous because if he's saying as an eviction attorney, this guy specialized in evictions, he knows all the ins and outs. And if he's saying that there could be a major non-payment issue, I mean, we already know there's going to be. I'm talking like 50, 60, 70% non-payment. That could put a real dent in a lot of companies. And, you know, what do you do? And
right.
So we've been talking about this for the last few episodes. Brian, you may have a different take on this, different spin. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I do. So here's my spin on it. And then for everybody who's listening, you know, we don't have to get political, but we can definitely talk about what I would call a partisan failure. If the package goes through, and I still say if, there's some interesting tidbits in there that allow for people to make money. And depending on the level, I mean, at some of these property management groups, you might have entry-level staff that maybe they're making, you know, $12, $13 an hour. The maximum benefit for unemployment is going to be boosted by $600, and it's going to be extended out from 3 months to 4 months. So that's in there. On top of, obviously, if you're in that criteria, you're in 10, 15, 20 even dollars an hour, under 75K per year, you're going to get a bonus check of $1,200, and that's per person. If you're a household, that's $75,000 or less per person, you're going to get $2,400. So you start looking at $2,400 a month. Now your maximum benefit goes from $350 to $900, or I'm sorry, it's $600 over the course of the month, but still, now you're looking at $500 every week. You are going to be able to pay your bill. So I don't think it's as bad as maybe your friend is indicating, because I think you're going to have to be able to prove that you had no income. And because they're waiving how quickly you can get it, they're also waiving for small business owners. Again, you have to think about this. No one wants to lay anybody off, but you can almost argue by furloughing them, and I'll talk about that in a second as well. You might be doing them a favor if you are willing to literally furlough them, maybe keep them on the benefits, offer them some other things. If you're paying their phone, keep that going, stuff like that. Let them collect unemployment. You're not going to be dinged. All the small business owners are not going to be. It's not going to come off of your unemployment insurance. So you're not going to pay your portion of it as the business owner. So if the work is not there right now, if work is drastically reduced, if people are having trouble paying, furloughing workers versus truly laying them off and doing some other things creatively to give them things that they wouldn't be able to get, with a benefits perspective, might be the best and most appropriate course of action. Again, if we can get the stimulus package put through.
Yeah, just caveat on that, Brian. Earlier in the week, we had to furlough 6 of our team members, and there was I don't know, I didn't feel good about it. I really felt crappy about it. It is brutal, and we called it a furlough with advice from our PEO provider, which is the payroll provider. Yep. They said, go ahead and furlough them for a little bit. That's the term, furlough. Yep. You can keep some of their stuff going on, but they can collect unemployment. That was the thing we needed to get ahead of. Now, if this unemployment boost comes and they can get that need quickly, they won't be as hurting as much as we would think. And,
that's right.
And we think we're going to see a rebound. We're going to see the accordion effect here. And one thing that Matt, I want you to talk about this, Matt, is kind of best practices for dealing with some of the tenants that approach you and say, hey, I can't pay rent talk me through some of the ideas of what you're thinking when they raise their hand and say, I'm going to have a hard time paying rent this month. What are you working on?
Yeah, so for the people that have listened to the show the last couple times, we went through this experiment where we basically reached out with different versions of an email and tried to proactively communicate with residents. And so we sent out to about 250 residents an email, had video, and the whole idea is that we want to proactively get ahead of this thing and understand, if you've lost your job. And thus far, out of those 250 residents, we've only had 7 respond to us that they've lost their job. Now, don't get too excited about that. We are asking them to jump through a few hoops before they respond to us. So there may be some out there, but it's not like, the numbers that I'm hearing, 70% not paying, is just not what the empirical evidence is starting to point out. We have had some residents reach out to us that's numbered in about the 20. So you're talking about total so far, only about 1% has actively reached out to us. We've actively reached out to 10%, and only 7 has come back. We just sent an email right before I went on to about 2,400 residents to find out if they're, we're going to find out the real numbers pretty soon. Our point is this: look, we want to help the people that need help. We want to do that with empathy, and we want to, but we all want to work through this together. So the whole idea of the email is, look, we're all in this situation together. We've got you understand that we have to collect rent, but we want to work with you. And so we've set up a process. The first step in that process is basically them verifying their hardship. It's requiring that their either former employer or current employer, if they've been furloughed, fill out a form and sign their name to it, attesting that this has happened. And then that kind of starts the negotiation. And we have a 4-step process that that are kind of increasing in length of time it takes to essentially pay this off. But this is a short-term thing, and we want to defer the people from trying to take advantage of a situation. We want to jump ahead, and we wanted to get into a situation where we're on the offensive versus they're on the offensive, and we're trying to prove that they're lying to us. So thus far, it's worked very well. I'm sitting here watching an active spreadsheet be filled out as our tenant communicators are responding to people who have reached out because they have a hardship.
So a couple of key points there is, one, document their hardship as far as make them kind of tell you why. They just giving you, it's just, I don't want to pay rent this month because that's probably not good enough. And then also, one thing I want to reiterate is get that agreement in writing. So if you do make some sort of concession, Matt, you probably want to, chime in on this too, is get that concession in writing. So, okay, Mr. Tenant, we agreed to take half now and half on the 15th, sign this form, sign this piece of paper to commit to that. We commit that to you, you commit that to us. We're going to waive whatever you're going to waive. And I'm not saying that's the best practice, but whatever you guys agree to, whatever keeps the tenant in your home and maintaining utilities, et cetera, and get us through this crisis, that's what we want to put in writing. So switching gears to Brian. Brian, tell us more on what you're doing, what's going on in your world. Just kind of give us a
I mean, it's so funny how similar it is, right? So we're a service provider for, a bunch of other vendors, right? So we have the same pain on the vendor side. And so to Matt's point and everybody listening, proactive communication is just about the solution to every problem. Honestly, it really is. So, I mean, when I'm dealing with customers that, we're working with and we're onboarding them to do some of their back office or whatever, the better the communication, the better the feedback, the better the result of the project we're taking on their behalf. So that plays into this exact same thing. So for us, we're in the same boat. We have to verify. Everybody's going to take advantage of not paying something if they can. Everybody's worrying about cash flow. And so there will be advantage takers out there. And I think getting out in front of it sooner than later is the right course of action. So yeah, for us, we're doing the same thing. I mean, for me, first order of business was to make sure I had 100% continuity, right? So we scrambled. We enacted our pandemic plan. Nobody's pandemic plan, including the United States of America, was bulletproof in this regard. This is obviously, absolutely unprecedented in our lifetime, situation. So no one saw this coming. I mean, on January 15th, the World Health Organization came out, look it up, this is not, fake news, and said there was no human to human transmissions. This started with an animal in Wuhan, China. And on January 15th, a very, very heavily funded World Health Organization said no human to human transmission. So, would have been great to have that 4 more weeks of of heads up, but we didn't. So our plan was in place. We have a multi-pronged approach. I think every business owner should be looking at a multi-pronged approach to solving this crisis and beyond. I mean, if there's any silver lining in this, it's you should have plans on top of plans and save for a rainy day. So.
Matt,
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. So one of the things we're really focused on is communication. I will tell you, even though I'm here by myself with my 3 friends, me, myself, and I, at the office, I have communicated more in the last 2 weeks probably than, I don't know, like, it's just like all I think about is communication. It's communication with our residents, which I talked about a minute ago. It's communication with our owners. What do we need? And one of the things that's hard when you're communicating, especially with your owners, is there's so many things we don't know at this point. We don't know who's paying rent. We don't know how that's going to affect them. We don't know what the government's going to do. But I think you still need to proactively communicate with your owners and make sure that they know that you're on top of it, that you're constantly watching it. Tell them the things you do know, tell them the things you don't know. And we've gotten a lot of really positive responses like, hey, thanks, we really appreciate you keeping us in the loop on what's going on. So communication with owners. And then the last thing, but maybe most important thing, is also communicating with your team. I mean, we're sitting here and our teams are watching the news and they're learning everybody else is getting laid off, everybody else is getting fired, everybody else is getting furloughed, and they're wondering, if you're not communicating with them, they're filling in the blanks. That is the worst case scenario. So I actively came out and said, look, we're not firing anybody. We're not furloughing anybody. In fact, I need you because we're gonna have to work harder right now than we've ever worked before. So it's very important for me to actively communicate. I've been doing that. I've been shooting a lot of videos that my team's been watching, sending text or Slack messages to individual team members, making sure I tell them that I appreciate them. And then the last thing, which I think is really important, is giving them the ability to ask me questions. We have something that we do on Fridays called Ask Anything Fridays. Usually it's 15 minutes. I'll let them ask me any question they want to ask. It's done over Zoom. We extended it to 30 minutes last week, and we could have gone a lot longer. But you want to fill in the blanks with the things that are going on in your mind. You don't want your team to fill in those blanks. And generally, when they fill in the blanks, it's worst case scenario. So just some thoughts.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think, we being an outsourced provider and, my staff being 15,000 miles away, we're obviously heavy on leveraging technology and Skype and Zoom and GoToMeeting. But I'll tell you, we've been maybe, remiss in having face-to-face video conferencing interaction. And obviously this has, we've been doing that a lot lately. And even that is tremendous. Just seeing the people. For us, it's very different. The Philippines and Manila, extremely different situation. It more rapidly evolved. The lockdown was a little bit more widespread, a little quicker, a little less notice. And business is different there. But we have 60 staff that are sheltered in place, that are literally in our office in Manila, living there. So not a really uncommon practice there. If you haven't ever outsourced, it's pretty common. In fact, it's legally required that if you get to a certain size, and we're over 350 there, you have to have sleeping quarters, male and female sleeping quarters, and you have to have a nurse on staff and a food pantry. So we really have all those things, and they were all kind of part of our disaster recovery plan already, but truly tested it to the limits with this situation. Never really, that was more of a handful or a percentage of your shift, not an entire team. So, but it's amazing. I mean, what I think has come out of this, if there's a positive, is that we've all kind of realized who's important to our organization, who really gets it, who we want to sacrifice for, and I think face-to-face communication, even through video, is better than a cold email. So keeping people calm and not panicked in this situation, and that goes with all your vendors, your staff, your clients, I think is critical right now.
So Brian, tell us a bit more about what you do for the PM community, kind of what your business process is, what your model is. I mean, how do you help property managers, and also how do you tie that into what's going on right now?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's going to be a paradigm shift with what's gone on here with this pandemic, right? So everyone has proven that they can work from home. So we do back office solutions, meaning we take on, some of your back office work, literally instead of going down the hall in your office, that's 15,000 miles away at the island of the Philippines. And, there's obviously a cost savings that comes with that. I think prudent growth as we emerge is the order of the day. And so you may have had to scale back. You may have had no choice. You want to be careful not to bite off more than you can chew when you scale back up. It will come back for sure. And maybe a prudent, measured growth opportunity is the order of the day. A smaller headquarters office and more remote staff, and maybe a combination of onshore and offshore, I think is really going to be a big part of it. I forecast that we will have a tremendous boom, not just my company, but anybody in my space, because I think, virtual has now become the order of the day, right? So that makes it a lot more palatable. They've proven they can do it. If you can do it down the road, then you can do it across the globe. So
we've been saying that this whole week. Matt and I have been talking about this online, offline, is that this is going to cause us to get lean. And so what was acceptable before, might have been 10 or 15% profit margin. You're making good money, and, you got the staff that makes you comfortable, and, all that, et cetera, et cetera. I think PMs are going to look at this and say, whoa, I need to make sure I'm really profitable in the good times, because when the bad times come, it's going to either kill me or I got to, start chopping heads at my organization.
Right.
So I think we want to look at things like what you're talking about and say, how much can I outsource? How much can I do in another country, in another situation, another market? How can I consolidate things? Do I need an office?
Right.
we spend $11,000 a month on an office space. Do we need that much? It's crazy what we spend, and we could grow into it further. But I also think we could scale some of that back. I think we could probably get by with a third of what we have as far as space.
Yeah.
And so I think it might cause us to say, okay, we don't need 6,000 square foot and then sublease out 2,500. We might need 600 square foot just for somebody to take rent for the 5% of people that refuse to get a checking account. You know what I mean?
I'll tell you, a market that's going to die is the commercial real estate market. I mean, one market that's going to have a really tough time and is going to have to reinvent themselves is for the next 12 months is the commercial real estate market.
Tell me more about that. I mean, let's touch on that a bit more. Do you have other comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, looking at what we did, so it really depends on what you do, and I've been very clear on this. I've been through the mortgage moratorium before, and it was on the retail side. We started off doing just work for default legal, so they've already been down that road where total suspension of foreclosures. When that did happen, it was a different crisis. It was a crisis of unlawful or nefarious lendings and part of the economic crisis that we were dealing with then, but they suspended it all. And, lawyers then compliance came in. So then it became that you can't offshore the work. So any of the work, not that the offshore had anything to do with the robo signing and that economic crisis, but that was the natural kind of overreaction and over constriction and oversight. I think more and more compliance and more industries, property management does not face it as much. I think it's coming down. So when you have security concerns coming, that sort of forces your hand because it's harder to have security protocols in place when you're work from home, right? So there is always going to be a place for office space because you can put a lot more things. We're ISO certified. It's one of our selling points at Global that we're all brick and mortar and everybody works from the office and it's biometric entry and, they're locked down and they're under camera surveillance and blah, blah, blah. And that's how we get through, assuaging concerns that, they're not at home and taking pictures with their cell phones and things like that. But I do think you're going to find that medium, and there's going to be a huge percentage of organizations who thought that they could not have their staff work from home. It would never work. And they're seeing now that it is, force their hand. So naturally there'll be companies that are looking at it going, hey, we could save a whole lot of money on rent, which is a large cost center for every organization. If we had a lot of our workforce working from home. Not only that, it's a pay raise, right? If people are working from home, they're not commuting, they're not paying gas, parking, whatever. If they're paying tolls to get in and out of a city, it depends on where they are. There's a huge savings to working from home as well. You might be able to get really good talent at a lower cost as well. So I do think this has opened a lot of eyes for sure. So I think commercial real estate is going to struggle.
Yeah, that's a good point, because one of the goals I had for this year before this year started to blow up was to buy a commercial space. We've got, I think, 18 months or less than 2 years on our commercial lease. And I think we're going to scale back big time. And I don't think we're going to be in the same location. We have to have a location. So I will say that,
Sure.
Matt, you'll agree with me, for licensing, for TransUnion, they require you to have a physical address. So I don't think the good companies are never going to get away with that. You know, as a rookie, when I started up, my, address was a UPS store and a PO box, right? So that's what I did when I was first started. And a lot of us did the same exact thing, to get off the ground. But once you get into an office space and actually become more legit, you just can never really get away from it unless the state changes and or the providers that we have to use change. Matt, any comments on this?
Yeah, I'm a little worried about productivity. I felt like in the beginning we were being very productive. It was new, it was quiet. We were getting a lot of work done. What I am seeing or what I'm feeling is that the productivity as this thing wears on, I don't know if it's because we're too busy watching the news or, we're focused on other things, but I feel the productivity go down. Now, are our team professionals and pull out and get back productive again? I just think there's a lot of noise right now, even for people that normally are working at home. They've got children at home. They've got they've got the news on, and there's breaking news probably happening every 5 minutes, and it's breaking their focus. So I think one of the things for me is just like the noise that's going on right now. I'm just not sold on obviously we have a number of team members down in Mexico that work for us who we're very pleased with, and they're very focused and do a really good job. But right now is kind of a different world where there's a lot more distractions and a lot more going on. And honestly, people are scared about their health, right? I mean, this is not like just an economic deal. It is a health issue. And I was just looking at certain numbers, and hospitals in Birmingham, right where I'm sitting, people are sick with COVID-19 or the coronavirus, and they're in the hospital right now. And so that number is shooting up through the roof. So it's just, we got a lot on everybody's mind, and it would be nice if we were all in here and could rally the troops. So now as leaders, we've got an even harder time trying to rally the troops, getting back to communication, rally the troops when there's just a lot of noise out there.
So one last comment, Brian, I'll turn it over to you for a final comment, is on the work from home practices. One thing I've seen is that a lot of people have a fire-up meeting, a startup meeting at like 9 a.m., for example. Everybody gets onto a Zoom call. They're on a Zoom call all day. Like, you can do this with Zoom. You can put up to however many staffers you have on an all-day call. They just mute themselves, and you make sure they're dressed. You make sure they do their hair, all that good stuff, and they're not wearing, pajamas, and they can take a phone call. Then you also put certain KPIs. So we make sure that every single forward-facing customer servicing person in our organization does 5 bomb videos per day, 5 per day. We track those metrics, and we get on them if they're not communicating well to the owners. And of course, you start taking complaints from owners and or tenants that nobody's responding or getting back to them. Yeah, then you know that they're not being productive. I say 100% yes, I know they're not as productive, but can they get the job done long-term? To be determined. Brian, your final comments, please.
Listen, I think if everybody listening here, they're already along the road here. If you're listening right now, there's 2 ways to face a crisis. One is to be, feed into the panic and be paralyzed, and the other one is to look at what is coming. We are going to emerge, and how prepared will you be for what is the new world order after this crisis is averted? And it's coming. It's going to be in April. It might be in May, and maybe even if it's June. But that gives you an opportunity right now to plan, and you should be planning. You should be ready for what's coming.
Gentlemen, appreciate the effort on today's episode. It would help quite a bit. I think we put some good info out there. So we'll continue this as tomorrow. Let's hope all this gets better. Okay, signing off, gents. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you. Bye-bye.